Alright, so no arty's good. A lot of tank destroyers is meh. You've got more heavies up top, which is interesting. So typically what I'll do is I'll set up in the back, like into this area over here, and look to get shots down into this area over here. All you got to do is just put your draw box over that area. You can't quite get as good of shots as previously because they added a ditch back here, more or less, that allows most tanks that aren't very tall to get by without being super easy to shoot unless you're in an artillery. And you got to see if your guys actually do any spotting as well. There's no real reason to move up very much further than that. Doesn't look like you're really going to get a lot of light, so... And that's fine. You always want to look at what your team is doing. About a third of your team went ice road, and the rest of them are sort of coming down in this way. You got to see what happens with these guys over here. Looks like one of your 8s went over to the bridge, which, meh. And again, when there's no artillery, you can play through the backside of over here pretty easily. And you're basically using this big hill here to protect you. Even in a tall tank like the Charioteer. The Charioteer does not have super good gun depression, so you don't necessarily want to come up here. Lol. The HE does damage every time. Yeah, I don't know why you had the Hesh loaded, but that ain't helping. And you don't necessarily need to come back to this rock. That's not necessarily the best place to hang out. You can be back in this area there. You can also play up in this area over here. Although it looks like your team is running away anyways. Most of your guys are pushing through that ice road. You want to basically let them come in. You don't necessarily want to hang out in this place where you're at, though, because you can get ISO'd there. See how your team is leaving? So there's no real point to you hanging out over there. You can stop, you know, basically right in here and get a shot as they come around and then just bail because you can use those rocks. They don't have enough speed, really, to stop you from getting away. Charioteer is reasonably fast. If you could take like that Tiger P out, that would be ideal. The problem for these guys over here is that they can control this area right here, so it's going to be really easy for them. You don't really get that great of shots over there. You can actually get better shots over from this bridge area, like see where this KV-2 and this Sturber is at. This isn't a very good place to cover this lane, just because they can basically drive up all the way to this rock. You actually probably want to be a little bit further back over there, because essentially what you want to do is you want to catch them coming across this area right here, or moving across their area right here. Like where you're at, they can basically get to within 100 meters of you, and you won't know it, right? You won't know it until they come around this rock from one side or the other. So you want to be careful playing this particular position, because you could be a little bit safer back here, get the same shots, and you can see down to the other side of this rock over here by being out there. Just right now, you don't have enough vision control over this lane. Lol, that Hesh. I don't know. This doesn't seem worth it. Definitely shouldn't have it for this guy. So I mean, if you're gonna use the Hesh, I mean, at least switch between the ammo. Don't just be like, oh, the first few shots that I'm gonna fire will all be Hesh. You do need to try to trade with this guy though, because you want to whittle him down before he gets too close. You've got better alpha than him. And you actually want to push this guy once you drop. Because you don't want him to be able to 1-2 you. And you don't want him to get backed up. So even if you have to take a shot from one of the other guys, or maybe he'll just drive up here. Okay. They are probably going to go back to caps. That's something you need to be aware of. And remember, you've got a turret and he doesn't. You're faster than him, so it should be very easy for you to flank him. Just usually the best thing to do is literally just drive straight at him, take that one shot of damage, get to his side, whether you shoot him or not, right? Take that one shot of damage to get to his side, and then kill him. Like, you have to use your mobility and the fact that you have a turret and the fact that he's a non-turreted tank destroyer, right? You don't want to, you're not looking to just trade 1 for 1. That's not nearly as much of an advantage as it is to just side travel him and kill him for free. Or for one shot, for the cost of 1. The low cost of 1 shot of damage. Lol. The low cost of 2 shots of damage. The low cost of 3 shots of damage. Alright, maybe this wasn't a good trade after all. Well, the news, I don't know that it's good news, is all these guys came back, which I don't think is necessarily super helpful. You're not going to be able to save that IS. So I think what you want to be able to do is get to a position where you can spot across a lot of different avenues. And I'm not really sure where you're going. Defending usually isn't the answer. Like, a lot of these guys will push through this road here, so you can actually like sit up here if you want, looking down there. But that's a pretty predictable spot. You don't get a lot of coverage. You'll get a little bit of bridge coverage, but if they drive up through here, you're not going to quite have the response time. And again, you want to get them in a situation where they're driving across a big open plain. You don't want to create a situation where you're fighting over a very short distance. And see how your guys are like pushing out here? So you need to be in a position where you can actually cover them, right? Otherwise, you're just basically going to be waiting here for these guys to die, and you don't want to be doing that. Right? You don't have any eyes in the middle. That's something where you could literally be out there spotting through that middle because it's such a short distance. You can basically just hang out right here, right, and shoot across. And then if they try to cross through the middle, you get your free damages. But you're just a little bit too far back, right? So they're not actually going to get spotted until they're up underneath over here. And that's going to be a bad situation. And again, if they push over on this side, you're not going to be able to support your guys over here. If they push over on this side, you're not going to be able to support your guys over here. So you always want to be in a position where if you're the guy in the back, and you're the guy that's sniping in the back, you want to be in a position where you can still cover these guys, right? You need to be close enough to these guys where if they get into an engagement that you can actually help them. Like, I never really feel like this position is a very good position to play. It's just the enemy gets far too many shots into you and you don't really have vision over anything. Let's speed this up a bit. And given the tanks that are left, I don't know that you should have Hesh loaded anyways. See how you guys have pushed across the bridge there? So you want to at least be on this side over here, because what you really wanted to be able to do was spot them if they came across there or came across here. Because right now, they can come across through here or even up underneath you over here, and you've got much more limited range of actual spotting them. We can't support you from F7. Yes, you cannot support them from F7, which is why you should not be in this current predicament. And so what you don't want to do is come up behind them. You'd actually probably rather come through the middle at this point. You just need to clear it. Oh, this is WC-111. a tank against whom your Hesh will be mostly useless, and who can now one-shot you. Luckily, he's not a very good player. So again, the Charioteer does not have very good gun depression. So all this guy really needs to do is just drive straight into you, right? Take the shot of damage to kill you. And so what you want to do is you want to create distance, and you want to shoot him as he's moving across. You don't want to allow him to move across and then you shoot him. Luckily, he's just kind of hanging out. I'm not sure why you're cutting out so wide, but like you could have gone through there and been a lot safer. And if you technically want to run away from him, that's okay. He doesn't seem like the bestest of players. The bigger problem is that you don't know what's coming up behind him. At this point, it's highly unlikely that you're going to win the game. It's just too much wasted time. And then you want to try to get a 2-for-1 here if you can. Yeah, that's probably not going to do it. That's fine. Now you don't need to rush, I mean, because he's getting flanking fire, so he's going to struggle to damage that other guy anyways. Unfortunately, your T-34 is now dead. And again, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to cover one side or the other. You ideally want to be far enough forward on this side where you can spot the bridge and the ice road, or you want to be far enough on this side where you can spot this across over here. And you don't necessarily want to all move together. Now, it's probably a little bit too late to push unless they also push foolishly right in front of you. This position would have been potentially good to attack into them when they were still up on this little plateau up here, because you can shoot down from this ramp up into that plateau pretty efficiently. You ideally want to be a little bit further to that side if you can, depending on what their setup is like. And so, like, this JT-88 didn't spot anything on that side over here, and you still have the AT-15 back in your base. But again, it's just too little too late. And remember, he's not going to have very good gun depression. You have better gun elevation, so you want to be closer to them. You want to get a little bit closer. The 25/2 is available to be shot. See how your JT-88 is getting in front of you? Like, these guys really can't hurt you. The closer you get, the less they have an opportunity to do anything. Because right now you're basically shooting these guys in the back that aren't really a threat to your team, right? Whereas if you were pushing that IS or this T-25/2, right, then that helps out your team. So you really want to get up here quickly, because these guys are non-turreted tank destroyers, so they're not really going to be able to do a whole lot. And you want to deal with that before these guys on the top of the hill come down to actually reinforce that guy. Like, those guys have yet to shoot at either of you, at any of your dudes now. Right, and then you just need your JT-88s to push this guy. So that was the IS-2. And so now see how these guys are coming down? Unfortunately, your JT-88 fell back. So what you wanted to do is you wanted to push that IS when he was actually further out. Fortunately now, gonna draw out, but dumbs to breaks. Again, oops, you weren't ever gonna win that one. Hang on, let me reload that one real quick just so I can show you the map. Just a bit too slow. The Charioteer is fast, but it's fragile, and it doesn't have good gun control at all. But it has good ammo on it, which is potentially useful. Okay, there we go. For some reason, one pops. So you went down to this south area, which is fine. I don't think that was that big of a deal. You were completely outnumbered, and so you left, which is also fine. But I think what you want to be able to do is make sure that you can spot down or shoot down avenues. And then I think coming back here was just a little bit too much of a waste of time. So I think you want to be careful about how, especially when you play a tank destroyer, you can't really think of the Charioteer like a lot of the other tank destroyers because it does have a turret, and so you can abuse a lot of people. It's kind of basically a medium tank with really poor gun control. That's sort of the more accurate way to think of the Charioteer. So especially like when your guys were pushing through this through that ice road side, or I'm sorry, we're fighting through that ice road side. Potentially you could have gone over there and helped them out over there. They did push their WZ-111 up here late. And again, a lot of things are just about engagements. When you know that you're one shot and he's at full health, you want to get those shots from as far away as possible, right? Get the free damage on him as he comes in. All that WZ-111 had to do was literally just drive straight at you and you would have been dead. And he could have killed you and they could have won the game. And so you need to be careful about controlling distances. And against that JT-88 that you fought just before the WZ-111, you took 2 shots of damage, which you really didn't need to. If you're in any tank with a turret against any non-turreted tank destroyer or any non-turreted tank, that especially one that's really slow, take that 1 shot of damage. You were within 30 meters of him. Take that 1 shot of damage from him. Doesn't matter how, when, or where. Just get to his side and then kill him. Right? Don't waste time trying to peek and poke, trade 1 for 1. There's no need for you to be that fancy. Get to the side, bully. Right? You would have just taken 1 shot of damage from him, and that's it. Instead, you ended up taking 2, which kind of hurt you a little bit later on. And it's the same thing. Like when your guys are pushing over here, what you need to do, whenever people are on the back line, that's almost always to your advantage because you can basically box them out. If you guys had pushed up here a little bit faster, you guys could have taken the IS before these guys flexed down the hill to actually get shots on you. But it was just a little bit too slow. And so I never find it very useful to snipe at guys on the back line unless the back line is actually shooting my tanks. If the back line is not shooting my tanks, I want to shoot those guys on the front line because those are the biggest dangers to the actual tanks on my team. And so that's something that you have to look for. All right, so if you look at the stats, not bad. You didn't get a whole lot out of your team. They didn't really get a whole lot out of their team either, though. So it was just a whole lot of camping by both teams, really, which led to a draw, unsurprisingly. Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with the firing Hesh on every shot. Like, if you want to switch to Hesh, because you're like, oh, I'm up against X tank, but then that's totally fine, and a lot of these tanks you could have penned with Hesh, but like, the first tank that you shot, which was maybe the IS-2, I think, as he pushed around through that, as he pushed around through this corner right here, you hit him for 18, right? And then you did pen him afterwards, but you would have done more damage by just hitting them twice with APCR. And then it's a situation where, like, if that tank was a STA, you can get that first shot with APCR and then load the Hesh, right? And then you would have done more damage. But I don't think that you necessarily want to start with Hesh, especially given the comp of their team. But otherwise, not bad. Nice try. Got to be a little. I think you need to be a little bit more active if you want to win. Like if the goal is just to draw out, then that's fine. But if the goal is to win, I don't think you can play like that. I don't think either team can play like that, but that's just me. Anyhow, nice try. Alright, so the next one will be criticals E5 on mines. Well, Hesh works on the exact same mechanics as HE, so if you hit any spaced armor at all, it's going to explode on the spaced armor. And that's why you ideally want to just have the APCR loaded and then switch to the Hesh, rather than have the Hesh loaded and be like, oh man, I don't have a very good shot with this. No artillery is good. They've got a better comp to win the hill. You can still drive up here, get your free shot of damage, and then see what your team does. And then you can always flex around to one side or the other, depending on whether they have this island area over here, or depending on what they push over here. But the fact of the matter is that they have a lot of... There's no artillery, and they have a lot of lower tier tanks that you're able to bully. So you want to try to bully as much as possible. But you need to understand that they're probably going to get the hill, so you want to get that free damage when you can. And so you always want to look and see what your team is doing. So your Lorraine is going over to the island, which is okay. It's not that bad. Your T-54 is also going out there, which is not as great. And then you want to aim just a little bit more to the left. Yeah, there you go. And you can stop. You just literally... Okay. You can snapshot too. I mean, that can work. But... basically, right, there's that ditch back there. And so you just want to aim as far to the left as possible because they have to come out of the ditch to get out. Right? And so what you, like your positioning right now as far as how forward you are is fine. What you don't want to do is you don't want to move much further forward, because moving further forward doesn't actually get you better shots on the ramp. All it does is it starts to expose you to get shot through this little crack right here. So what you can do, like see where this STA-2 is? This is actually a good position for a medium tank. Technically speaking, I wouldn't have moved a tier 8 tank there, but basically if you're in this position, like if you were in this position with your E5, that's a good position because these guys can't sit there and trade against you because it's basically flat ground, right? There's no hull down position for them there, and you can't get shot by this guy. This Object 140 can't poke around through that side there. See how you're moving up here and you're starting to expose the side of your tank to this 140. And the thing that I always try to sort of do when I'm positioning myself is I try to identify really what's the threat. Like these guys aren't really the threat because these guys are the guys that you're trying to shoot. They're going to try to drive past you, and you know they'll take a snapshot on their way by. So what you need to do is you need to actually protect yourself from this guy and anybody else that might have come up behind him that can just poke out here now and basically get shots into your side because you don't really have a whole lot else there to prevent them from doing so. So you can pressure here, and then again though, like you can pressure here, but pressuring here allows this guy to shoot you on the side. It doesn't give you any advantage of shooting this guy. Like you could very easily be 10 meters to the right over here, get the same shot on this 4190, and this guy cannot shoot you. So micro positioning is important. Luckily he bounced. And you just need to be careful about that guy behind the rock. Because basically what you're doing is you're pushing yourself into a flank. Luckily he is not playing said rock very well. If he's going to let you perma-track him there. And again, if you're on his side, you don't need to be super close to that rock, right? Because you don't want to expose your track. You only want to put your turret through there. So again, if you're going to play this position, if you play this position about 10 meters, not even 10 meters, let's say 5 meters to the right over here, you can face your armor a little bit more towards this pattern, and then he has to roll around this outside if he wants to shoot you, but you're still protected. Although it looks like the 140 has been spooked off. Well, the good news is they killed that guy over on the island. They've got a couple of heavies around the town side, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. I would try to get some shots on this this patent, as long as that patent's gonna sit out there. Like, as these guys push forward, see how you have your 4190 underneath them? As these guys push forward over here, you've got a bunch of tank destroyers there, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. I would try to get this as much damage out on these guys over here. They're putting themselves in a position. They're begging you to shoot them. They're saying, "Hey, you've got better armor." I wouldn't worry about the bulldog at this point. It's really not that big of a deal. Like, that bulldog is really not a threat to you, because you're far enough forward that he can't really bother you. What you really need to do is, like, you know how that T-54 was out here? Bully that guy. Don't let him retreat. So they're starting to wrap around this outside of the town, so you need to keep an eye on what's happening over there. But if this pattern's going to allow you to kill him, just kill him. And again, if you are 10 meters to your right, 5 or 10 meters to your right, you don't have to worry about the crack. The only thing that at that point is if the 140 actually comes all the way around that outside to overexpose himself to get a shot on you. And the thing is, you're letting that patent retreat in this time. So that patent that sort of overextended himself here now has the opportunity to get away. And you just saw that 140 shoot. Man, these guys are just begging you to bully him, and you're only getting a shot like every 30 seconds. They're just sitting out there. They're just like, I can take an E5. You're just spending far too long loaded and not doing anything. Like, especially when you're up, it's one of two things, right? It's either a tank mismatch or a skill mismatch. Like, these players are not good players, and they're not in very good tanks to counter you. Even if they were good players, they're not in a very good space where, you know, they can bully you. You can bully them, and they're worse players, so you can't be spending all these reload cycles where you're literally doing nothing. And again, it's a situation where if you're where that bulldog is, that guy can't shoot you. He's got to come around that outside in order to shoot you. And so you need to be careful about leaving this area here, because once they get right here, once they get into this position right here, that's when you can own the people that are underneath. Like, this position that you're moving to is not a good position. This is basically the Omega position that you go to. This is the position that you go to when you're just about to die. Because once they start getting over here, they can shoot through that area. And you want to either start moving that course forward or start edging around him, because you need to start thinking about how to take out that IS-3 or the tortoise that's here. And if you're not going to prevent these guys from coming through here, you need to protect the backside. Just far too much camping from this team in general, unfortunately. You can see how far forward this T-54 and Patton are coming. Uh-oh. T-28 Proto's in the good, getting towards the good spot. And the reason why this area is good is because these guys over here cannot shoot them over here, and basically there's a hill in this middle that you can use to hold down and then shoot down into that, towards that area. Yeah, you can just let that tortoise push. I don't think the tortoise or the IS-3 are going to push. See how your guys are counter pushing over here? Right? You need to be leading that charge rather than being the guy in the back. Just too much passive plays. Well, that's good. That'll be helpful. You still can counter push through this middle area here pretty easily. They got a Ferdinand in the back. You don't need to worry about that tortoise right now. It's not like the tortoise can burn around that outside. Oh, looks like their Ferdinand went over to the island. Even better. You should be able to bully these guys. Just straight bully. Remember, you just shoot them through the cheek, and you're concerned about these guys behind you a little bit. But as you get further forward, that's not going to be a problem. You don't need to back up. I still wouldn't back up. Like, you can still bully these guys that are in front of you. There's no reason for you to even turn around in this direction. Oh, you're gonna get pushed in the back! Like, there's no... Like, that guy could not have shot you. It is literally impossible for him to shoot you if you just stayed over there. But now you're one shot, which is going to be a whole host of other challenge. Don't lead with the back of your tank. The back of your tank is not the strongest armor. Shoot down the little thing. Shoot it down. I guess now you don't need to shoot it down, but... Unfortunately, he'll be loaded slightly before you. What you gonna do? Yeah, you cost yourself this game pretty badly. So, I thought coming up here was fine. Again, make sure that you control your micro positioning. Identify where the threats are, right? So if that 140 is shooting you through that little crack, he's got very limited shots through that crack. And so if you eliminate his shots through that crack, then you make it easier on yourself, because then you just have to worry about these guys up here. If he drives all the way around this outside, you've got some bunch of tank destroyers back there, but he also exposes himself in order to do that, so you can swing your turret down over in that direction and get a shot on him as well. But that's not a very good shot for him to drive around over here. Shooting through this crack, that's pretty easy, and you basically made it difficult on yourself. And then again, the biggest problem though was that you didn't identify the fact that you were in a better tank against players that were in worse tanks, were in worse positions, and were not really that good of players. And so when you have that sort of confluence of events where that T-54 just hung out here, that M48 was just begging for you to shoot him. He's like, please shoot me. I got someplace that I got to be. And you just didn't. You spent so much time loaded. About half of the time that you were here, you were loaded, and you were just like, I don't really feel like shooting yet. And that needs to be a little bit different. If you take these guys out earlier, right? If you take out that threat so that they can't backdoor you, then you can turn around and deal with these guys that are over here without a problem. Even if you take, one or two extra shots of damage early there in order to get those guys out, that's important, because then you clear off that whole side, and then you can come back and deal with the rest. And it seemed like you were reluctant, for whatever reason, to actually push an advantage there, and that ended up costing you, because basically you slow played where you had an advantage, and in the meantime your guys essentially lost every place else. And I think that was the biggest problem with what I saw there. I mean, the sort of theory of playing through this middle and challenging them on the hill was a good idea, because you're in the right tank to counter them, because they don't have a whole lot that can stop you, right? They don't have a whole lot, none of these tanks can really snapshot at you frontally, whereas you can snapshot at all of them and pen. And so that's where your advantage was, and it just really didn't feel like you applied it very well. But let's see, you did pretty well. Neither team did super awesome. Whenever you've got a bunch of tank destroyers up on that hill, you know that they're not going to do very well. But it's just one of those things. I still felt like this was an easily winnable game. You just needed to be a little bit more aggressive on clearing out that hillside, especially since they were giving it to you. I mean, they were really giving it to you, because those guys were struggling to deal damage to you, and they were sitting out in the open. And so you got to take advantage when people are being foolish. You got to punish. You can't let them get away. But pretty good. I mean, you did 9k damage, right, and 1200 base experience, and yet, like, you should have won. Like, you should have probably done like 12k damage and won the game. But that's not how it worked out. I just felt like that slow play hurt you more than it helped you. GG. Nice try, though. That feels that you get when you do 9k damage and then watch the replay and realize that you should have had a lot more. Like, that was one of those games where you at the end you should be thinking, man, I'm almost out of ammo. Should have been. Alright, so the next one we'll watch is... Ooh, it's another E5 game on Cliff. But that's one of the things that I tried to emphasize, when we're in the stream. And maybe I don't point it out enough when it is actually happening. It's like, if you're up against, I talk about, I have a local advantage against these tanks. But a lot of times, if you're up against worse players, you need to bully. You can't allow them to get out of a bad position because you're being nice. You don't let them retreat. If they're sitting out in the open, punish. Just straight punish. All right. Pretty much the same comp, big arty. You can probably have to go up through this side. Playing heavy tanks from the south is always difficult. You can play up through this middle area here if you're cautious enough, but you're probably going to get artied eventually. You can potentially play through the F2 in the E5, but I don't know that will ultimately be a good play. It's usually best to try to control through the middle and see what your mediums do in the meantime, and maybe you'll have to push around the outside depending on what your team spots, etc., etc., etc. So let's see what your team does. So you're sending some mediums through that F2 position, which is fine. Your IS-7 is also going through there. So you might be able to control through that donut, which will actually be helpful for you. And so what you'll want to do, at least initially, set up like behind one of these houses over here. Basically, that will make you already safe. And see what you can see. Right, as you're driving up here, if they send somebody across over here, you can get a shot through this position, like right now. Or, even if it's just a snapshot. And then you just want to move up behind the house. And you don't want to drive out here, so you can get hit by arty from basically anywhere on this path. And so whenever you play an E5, like I'll hit you with my CGC if I see a high tier heavy heading through this way, because I know these guys up here, this T62, the 5051, I know those guys are still going to be there, right? But I got a limited opportunity to hit you or this IS-7 as you go through here. And so what you really want to do is you want to stop behind this building, otherwise I'm going to punish you. Like that. You're lucky he missed, but okay. Luck is part of the game. You don't. The problem with the E5 is that it's got that sweet side armor, and you don't want to give it up because otherwise people will hurt you. If you can get that CGC out, that would be advantageous to you. He's already down the hill, unfortunately. And so they're starting to push around this outside here, so you probably actually want to flex over and help your IS-7. Their CGC went down on the ground over here, so you know that he's not on this outside here. And then what you want to do is you want to draw these guys around on this outside. Like where this IS-7 is, you actually want to be a little bit further back where you're safe from the enemy artillery. But in order to attack you, your opponent has to drive into a place where your artillery can shoot them. And you basically shot on the outside of his front hull on the little... There you go, that's a good one. If you could shoot, I can't tell where the rock is, but if you can shoot a little bit more to the left, you'll hit through the drive wheel and you'll potentially track him out there, at least force him to burn a kit. And again, if you're this IS-7 on your team in front of you, you actually want to play a little bit further back, like pretty much in your position. He's going through that other little dip, which is fine, right? You want them to push through here. And again, you want to back up a little bit, basically to where this TVP is. Once you start backing up further than that, then their artillery starts getting shots on you. You basically want to let your artillery do some work here. You're not going to get very good shots on the IS-7. You don't really need to back up anymore, because backing up isn't protecting you from the guys in front of you, right? They have the exact same firing angle on you. But backing up is going to start giving the enemy artillery, you're going to start exposing yourself to other lanes of fire. So you always want to identify, you know, not just where the guys that are in front of you are going to shoot you, but also where the guys that are behind you are going to potentially be a problem. That's a nice shot. And then you can potentially turn around. I don't think you have an angle to shoot these guys, really. Yeah, it looks like he's pushing out, though. So you potentially could. Your 62A is on the other side. Your CGC gone. And then I would just try to push this IS-7. You know, tell your platoon mate buddy, your T62 buddy, to come and help. And then you just want to take the damage and make sure that you either track him out here or prevent him from otherwise retreating. And then you just don't draw back. Push forward. You can out damage him here. Good job. Nice work on being patient. And then now you can turn around and deal with the other side if you want. They can potentially move that 140 around through the back, but you're not really super concerned about that unless you're one shot. You need to try to figure out a way that you can save the base or save your team. Like, there's no reason for your T62A to have stayed there. Like, you need to be the guy in the front. You don't want your mediums in front of you. You want to be in front for your mediums. Unfortunately, your mediums be dead. And so the drawback of the position that you're playing in right now is that basically you're going to trade 1 for 1 with this E4. right? And trading 1 for 1 with an e4 is always to his advantage. And so you want to be in a position where you can get him on the way in, where you can get a shot of damage on him for free. You're not really going to get a shot on that 140 unless he comes down. And then shoot for the trap. So what you should do against that e4 is just track him and then move around the back. Remember that the e4 has got a limited turret, right? It only has a 180-degree turret. So if you track him, and all you got to do is get to his side and behind him, and then basically his game is over. And then ideally you do it as close to the hill as possible, which forces that 140, although he's now dead, to come down. And again, if you can get this guy to bounce, all you gotta do is back up and track him. There you go. Now get to the side. And then retrack him. That's what you should have done sort of from that first shot. And again, remember, he does have a 180-degree turret, so he can get enough on that side. He's just not going to be able to turn much further, which is why you want to sort of lock him in the back rather than on the side. Lol, GG. And then now you actually probably want to push their artillery, as silly as that sounds, rather than face the JPE. Right, the JPE got off the cap, so the JPE is going to be coming up this ramp right here. But he's a slow player, so he's not going to be able to play out there. So it would be better for you to push around through this side, see if you can get the artillery, take a chance of them not hitting you, and then come back for the JPE, because the JPE is the slowest piece on the board. And so whenever you can completely negate somebody like that, you always want to try to do it, right? If the JPE is not going to be able to catch you, do anything else that gets you away from the JPE. Lol. And the snapshot to boot. And then yeah. This is not oh man, you would have run into that 155-55 too. That would have been awesome. That would have been fantastic for you. And you actually want to get to the other side of this building so that you're safe from the other artillery. Basically, because that shot's going to come from over in that area over there. You don't want to sit where you're at. Yeah. Unfortunately, if you went around this way, you actually probably would have won. Oh no! Yeah, I saw that one coming. And again, it's a simple matter of if you can negate the slowest piece on the board. It's just like the same thing if it was a T95 pushing through here, right? You don't need to engage him. Just go the other way, kill everybody else, and then come back and deal with him. If he's putting on cap pressure, that's one thing. But he drove right through, right? There is no cap pressure on you. So there's no reason for you to even bother engaging the JPE, right? So you always have to identify what the biggest threat is, or the easiest route through. Lol, that JPE. All he has to do is just let his corpse drop. Like that. Oh shoot. Alright, hang on, we'll load the game again. It was a pretty entertaining game. I mean, you did well. Just there are a couple of things, and again, you know, if things happen quickly and you don't have time to think about them, that's one thing. But if you spend a lot of the game sitting around, then there's really no excuse for you not thinking about what you should be doing. So moving over here is fine. Again, I think you need to be a little bit more arty safe. You know that you're going to get lit through there. You know that you're going to be able to get a shot over here. Like, I didn't really feel like it was totally necessary to shoot that bulldog that came over on this side, which is fine. If that's the only shot that you have, then that's fine. But like they sent like their 140 across here, and you could have had a better shot on him instead. I thought that would have been better. And then just make sure you're safe. And then once you're safe, then you can continue along your way. You don't want to just continue driving on this road. It's just too easy for me to hit you there. So you don't want to do that, especially if you're up against big artillery in a tank like the E5, which has relatively weak side armor. But you got lucky and he didn't hit you, so that's good news. And then you actually fought really well over here, I thought. Your IS-7 was too far ahead, but you actually had pretty good positioning. And again, it's this sort of magic area in this position about right here where you have to force them to come around because that's going to allow your team to get shots, your arty to get shots. But you're reasonably protected from their team, from their arty. And so that's a good way to play that. Unfortunately, like whenever you're in a platoon, like it's you, the arty, and the T-62, like you need to communicate with that T-62, right? Because that T-62 cannot die over here. You need him alive. So you can't allow him to engage that E4 on that side over here. You need to be the one that does that. And similarly, when you're pushing that IS-7, you need to let him know so that he can come over here and get free damage on that IS-7. And then again, at the end, you know, once they pushed in rather foolishly, once you were able to dispatch that E4, that's fine. That's great. And then you know where the JPE was because he moved through the cap, right? And so you know that the GPE is going to come up this ramp, and the only other pieces on the board are artillery. Whenever you can minimize the slowest piece on the map, just do it. There's no reason, there's no imperative for you to engage the JPE at all. He's not threatening any of your tanks. He's not threatening your cap. He's just driving around. He's a Sunday driver. And so if you can minimize his effect by engaging elsewhere, then do it. If you can get him for free, that's one thing. But that wasn't going to happen because he's driving up this ramp right here. And the only way that you have to get to him is to drive straight into him, right? And that's not a good trade for you. That's not a good look for you to go, okay, well, I'm going to take this JPE on frontally from 200 to 300 meters. That's not your wheelhouse. That's his. And so you need to be careful about that. And it would have been a lot easier for you to go around after their arty, especially considering the fact that their Batchat at that time was literally coming around this lighthouse looking for you. So you would have run into him on the way out there, and then you could have gone and potentially killed the CGC and then come back for the JPE. And in doing that basically takes out a number of variables that you have to work with. It gives you room to then sort of engage the JPE at a time that's advantageous for you. All right, but if we look at stats, both teams did about the same. Your T-62A needed to satellite around you a little bit more to take advantage of the shots that you were generating. Like, he could have been out a little bit more towards the artillery to get shots like on those IS-7s that were coming around in the E5 that were coming around the lighthouse from range. And he needed to not be in the front like when they were pushing in the E4 and their T-62 or whatever, or Object 907 or whatever it was through the back, right? He needed to not be there to take the brunt of that. The medium, the E5 is a tank that should be fronting, and the T-62A is a tank that should be flanking. And if once you clear one side and that those roles need to be reversed, the tanks need to be reversed, and the E5 needs to move from the back to the front, and the T-62A needs to move from the front to the back. And so just know your role, play your role, communicate with your platoon. But pretty good game though. You did a really good job on those guys at the lighthouse. So that was the best piece. And then it was just the only bad decision was going after the JPE. Well, one of the bad decisions was going after the JPE. There were a lot of minor things that are in there as well. But GG, well played, nice try. It's very rarely important to save artillery, especially against a slow tank like that JPE. All right. Everything is situationally dependent, I remember. So, there's times when I play with Miz and Miz plays as Artie, and he goes, why didn't you save me? Why didn't you come back and save me? And I'm just like, because I went to win the game instead. And if I if I have the choice between winning the game and saving you, winning the game is to everybody's benefit. And sometimes you need the artillery alive for specific reasons, so you do need to go back and defend them, but sometimes you don't. It's not like the JPE is going to chase down the CGC. The CGC is not very fast, but neither is the JPE. All the CGC had to do was basically hide where he was at, right? And it was going to take the JPE a long time in order to get over to him. And in that time, you could have potentially taken out the artillery and been in the base. And if, like, let's say the exact same thing, let's say the exact same roles played out how they did, where the JPE goes down over the cliff, right, to YOLO onto the CGC. In the meantime, you've already killed the 55 behind the lighthouse, and then you go into their base and kill their CGC, and then you just get on cap, and the JPE can't get to you in time, right? He's only got 100 seconds in order to get from the ditch where he YOLO'd onto the CGC back to the cap, and that's not going to happen in the JPE. So when you have time, again, sometimes things happen quickly and you don't have time to really think them through. But other times, you've got plenty of time to think about what's going on, and you've got platoon mates. And one of the advantages, like if you watch how we play in platoons, if I die in a platoon, or even if I don't die when we're platooning, I'll always feed information to people. I don't like to tell people what to do in their tanks. I don't like to tell them, oh, go lighthouse, go here, go there. I think the best thing that you can do is give information of JP's on his own. He's coming up the road straight at you. I think information is really useful to be fed. So like the T-62 could have told you, where the JPE was, and if, like, let's say that you weren't paying attention to the score. Hey, they've only got artillery left in their base, right? And so I think getting that type of information is really helpful, and that's sort of the perk of, ideally the perk of being in a platoon, is that if there is communication, then you guys will talk to each other and hopefully help each other out in terms of making decisions. Alrighty. So we'll do one more. There's IS-2. No, this is not the right game. I guess this is the right game. Okay, IS-2 on Siegfried line. No, it's not a situation of never go back to save your platoon mates or save your Artie. It's the decision of timing, right? It's going to take the JPE a long time to chase down the CGC. And in the meantime, you can chase down their artillery. Again, if you can catch that JPE out in the open where you're safe and he's not, that's one thing. But that wasn't the situation that you were in. You were basically driving back into the... Hang on, let me pause this. You were actually driving back into the JPE frontally. Where he was driving out at you, you were driving at him, and you were not already safe because you were driving out to a situation where his already could shoot. So literally every single player on his team could shoot you. Literally every single player could shoot you. And the only person who couldn't shoot really anybody was your CGC, because he wasn't really going to have a very good shot on the JPE where the JPE was at. Oops. Why does this counter keep going? Okay, anyways, on to this game. Top tier, smallish, arty. No. A lot of these tanks you should be able to bully. So I generally try to take up a position like on anywhere on the west side of this town and look to get shots of opportunity early. And you can either spot through this side over here or this side over here. You do want to be able to figure out where you can get shots on people moving across. You didn't really send much out to the field, which is fine. It's not really that big of a deal. It's just something that you need to keep an eye on because you want to know if or when they're going to break through there. And this is fine. The only thing that you need to be aware of is that you can actually get shot from back here through this bush. So they move that T1 heavy up. So if you get the opportunity, you can push up here and shoot across into that T1 heavy. Although it looks like your team has done so already. They put these guys on this line over here, so you can actually get a shot there and then back up as well. You can zoom that in. Oops. I think I might have been zoomed out there. And then you want to be careful playing this position. You either want to be forward or you want to be back. You don't want to play this middle ground because it's too easy for Artie to hit you. Little Chinu in the back. Wow, I can't believe that hit him. So their IS-2 pushed forward. So you need to keep an eye on your side here. And you don't know what else is on that line, so you need to be careful. Oh man, the 1 damages. And their IS-2 is pushed up a little bit on that back, but... And if you can get a shot on this IS-2 for free, try to do it. He's not looking at you. And again, you can aim that in a little bit more. Because there was a small chance that that was not going to get him. Oh man, the low rolls. Isn't it a 390 gun? Yeah. If you say it. You do need to take that IS-2 out, even if it does cost you. And then what you want to do is you want to control this line right here, this sort of F line, the north side of this F line. They're starting to push up through the field, but that's not that big of a deal. Don't worry about that guy. So the thing about this plot area right here is that this is a very bad place to play. Because see where this VK is? This VK can abuse anybody along this line right here. So this is a bad place to play. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to push through here in order to get shots there, because that actually allows them to counterfire. What you want to do is you want to be on this side right here, because if you control this area, you can control this entire field area here. So they're breaking through the field area, which is not that big of a deal. And then you need to be careful about how you push through here, because most likely there's going to be a tank destroyer in the back. And you're not going to have the bestest of spottings. There's no reason for you to head more west. You actually want to head as far east as possible. I'd actually shoot the Nishoran. The Nishoran can pen you. The T-58's gonna not quite as much. You also probably didn't need to move forward right there, because that tree that's over there was sort of allowing you to camo snipe. Oh my god, zoom in! That one wasn't me. And then you just need to actually go back, because you're losing this backside, and these tanks are all slow, so you just turn around and go back. Like, there's no reason for you to be out here. Because if they put on cap pressure, you're kind of boned. Although it doesn't really necessarily look like they are. And you can just counter push right through these guys if you want. And you want to close the gap as much as you possibly can. Looks like the ELC broke out, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. There's nothing that you can do about that. Focus on the one guy that's ISO. So this T-67 is going to try to probably hook up over here, so you want to be in a position where you can pick off as many of the ISO tanks as possible. Right now the ELC is ISO'd on one side, but it looked like he kept going that way and the T-67 is ISO'd over here. He's probably still in front of you. Yeah, he managed to get out, so you're not really going to catch him. Unfortunately, your team appears to be following you around, which is not so good. And you just want to, yeah, push through this cover through here. And even if you have to come around through here, that's fine. You need to close the gap because you don't really have a very snipey gun. So you don't want to push out through here. Like, there's no reason for you to push out on this side. You could have done the exact same thing by pushing through here and been a lot safer. There's the Wolverine. Like, see how there was no reason for you to have to take that shot of damage. And again, this is just a matter of closing the gap. You always want to be closing the gap. And then even if that's pushing all the way around out here to come around underneath, you want to be able to close this gap before he can actually spot you. Although it looks like he's going out there, so that's fine. We still don't know where their artillery is at. He might be in the K0. He might be in that sort of K8. You don't really have a whole lot of intel. But if you push up through this side, if they're out in this field area, you should be able to catch them. Looks like they're going to try to play keep away. And if they do, that's fine. You probably want to actually see if you can take out the artillery. Although you do need to be careful because they can still cap you. Oh, look, there they go. And then now you just need to push him because you're out in the open. This is not a good look for you. And then you don't want to come up the hill right on him. Ooh, you managed to avoid it, right? And you know that the ELC is also over there. Oh, they got one of them. I would actually just go and push the artillery. The ELC you know was in the cap because he's the one that set it off. Well, I guess technically it could have been the RD, but highly unlikely. So the ELC is probably in these trees over here. You're not going to outspot him. And again, it's a matter of closing the gap, and what you want to do is you want to go attack him from an area where you have the most amount of cover on the way in. Lol, he'd just be driving around. And you're still not really sure where their artillery is at, but I would just see if you can push their artillery. Going through the cap is not really going to help you. You really just need to find the artillery. And so what you should do is you should check behind this house, because basically checking behind this house allows you to focus on that over there. Oh, we got him. That was a little lucky, but not too bad. So yeah, their artillery is probably out in the field. And so it's probably better to push the artillery than to allow him to come in, but I guess we'll see. Because otherwise you basically give him 2 free shots, and then also basically he can try to peek over this hill. There's 1 free shot. Yeah, you should be careful about knocking over stuff. Although it does not look like he's charging in, although I presume that he will. There he goes. And then so, if you're this artillery, you almost want to do what this guy did, but not really. So what you want to do, if you're this artillery, is you want to be up here a little bit earlier, first of all, because you want more than 1 second in order to have to shoot this guy. So you can take your free shot. And all you have to do is come up here light, right? So both of you guys are lit. The Artie is lit, and the IS-2 is lit. And then this Artie, all he has to do is just back up. Just back up behind this hill, because you've got indirect fire. You can lob it over the hill, right? And that's sort of the problem of staying on this cap, is that an artillery can spot you, then back up where you can't shoot him, and then take his time to shoot you. And that's sort of the issue of staying on this cap. But looks like it worked out for you, so that's good. It's just something to be careful of. So you played through this middle area here. I thought you actually did pretty well. They didn't really challenge too much through the middle, which is interesting. And that allowed you guys to get across, and that allowed you to really wreck. They did a pretty good job of picking around through the outsides. And again, whenever you're in a slow tank up against a bunch of faster tanks, you want to try to cut them off, get them into an ISO situation. And you want to do that by basically taking a route that gives you the most amount of cover, so that where they don't have vision control, you don't want to have to drive across the long open distances in order to get into them. And so a lot of it is sort of predicting where they're going to end up going, and then sort of cutting them off, not letting them group together, things like that, and then deciding when to push artillery and when not to. So if you look at the stats, pretty good. Neither team really did a whole lot there, but that'll happen. GG though. 13 to 15 is good. That gun is not super accurate, but you did well with it, so that's good news. GG, well played. Just be a little bit more careful about dem artilleries.